Ladies and gentlemen,
you are now tuned in to Mastering Mitzvahs. Mastering Mitzvahs, a podcast focused on creating the perfect bar and bat mitzvah celebration, offering tips, tricks, and trends to ensure an amazing event. Mastering Mitzvahs. From New Jersey's own Explosive Entertainment. Explosive Entertainment.
I know you're gonna dig this.
And here they are, your hosts, Dylan Weissman and Mike Langser.
Did you really just put those glasses on? Dylan, you knew I would say no to that if you showed me in advance.
Yeah, but you can't say anything about it live now. I got my
I'm
solar eclipse glasses on, ready for it.
Solar eclipse glasses. So we're recording on April 8th. The solar eclipse is going to happen in about 2 hours. And you're wearing the glasses indoors without any sun.
So I can tell you right now that these are pitch black if you're not looking directly at a sun. So do not recommend if you're trying to look at the screen also.
Excellent. Well, let's put those aside. And let's focus on our mitzvah podcast here today. Episode 137. We've got a great guest who I'm so excited about. Veronica from Vero-Luce Photography. She is one of my favorite photographers to work with. So much fun, so creative, and a whole lot of personality. We're going to see it all come out in just a few minutes. So without any further ado, let's bring Veronica in here.
There she is.
Hey,
guys.
How are you?
Good. It's Eclipse Day.
It is. Is this a big day for you? Are you like all about like the asteroids and the things going on?
I am. Actually, we were supposed to take a trip to go see the eclipse. That was our original plan. And then actually we ended up getting back last night and foregoing because we couldn't get any reasonable airfare accommodations anywhere. And the campgrounds up north aren't open yet for our trailer.
Got it. So you just came back from camping. How many days away were you?
We were gone 5 days.
Nice. And were we celebrating anything?
My birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a funny guy there.
I knew. I just needed to. I needed to hear you say it.
Yeah, nah, that's all I'm saying.
Awesome. Well, happy birthday, Veronica.
Thank you.
So welcome to our podcast. I think you did do a podcast once, but it was like light years ago, we'll say,
yes.
In the eclipse.
Yes, we were much younger.
Much younger, and maybe even pre-COVID. So life has changed.
Yep.
Why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got started and when you got started in the photography game?
Oh boy. All right. So I'm Veronica Yankowski. I'm owner of Vero-Luce Photography. This year marks my 29th year as a professional photographer. So I'm doing this a long, long time. I got started back in high school, and originally I was a photojournalist. So I worked in news the first 11 years of my career. And then when I had my daughter, I kind of realized that I couldn't go chasing fires all hours of the night. So I switched up to portrait and wedding work. And that kind of shifted over the past 20 plus years into boudoirscape and mitzvahs and product photography and fashion and all kinds of fun stuff. So it's been a wild ride.
That is a wild ride.
Yeah.
Chasing fires versus chasing mitzvahs. I just out of curiosity, which one gives you more of a rush?
Oh, well, the fires gave me a lot of rush. I miss it a little bit, but it's not the same as it was back then. So
that is wild. So the whole goal of today's podcast is to educate our listeners about photography. And Dylan and I are admittingly a little naive in the photography land. Like we work with photographers often. We see great photography. We see poor photography. We know what we like, but what we don't know is how to educate a client. And I think that's the goal today is, let's start there is like, what tips do you give to somebody that's looking for photography? Like, where do they even begin?
Oh, that's a good question. So I normally tell folks, if you see something and you like it, and if you see it on Facebook or a friend, use somebody and you really like their work, then obviously ask who they used. So a referral is the best way because you've seen it, you like it, and you trust, a friend or family member who used that person. So that's number one. The best thing you can do is a referral from somebody you trust. If you start Googling people and looking at 10, 15, 20 different people, you know how it is. It's the same thing when looking for a venue. It's so overwhelming and so exhausting. So I always tell people three of every vendor, three of everything. Don't do more than that because you're just going to drive yourself nuts, and it really comes down to your budget and who you click with. You have to like that photographer, click with that photographer, and in the mitzvah scape, your kid has to, mesh with that photographer and feel comfortable and feel good. So that's super important.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you're looking out for these vendors, how can you know that you found the right photographer outside of budget? Outside of
Mhm.
budget, what are some of the things that like I as a family would want to know before booking? Like, how do I know that I found the right one?
So you want to know the reputation, A. We get a lot of photographers, you've heard the horror stories, right? They went out of business. They're not answering phone calls. People aren't getting their photographs, and then the person isn't emailing them. And that's scary as all get out. And it makes the rest of us who are doing this a long time with impeccable reputations look bad. So do your research, Google them, see what comes up, make sure that they have great reviews, make sure that they're participatory online, that they have a presence, and that they're going to respond to you. So that's first and foremost. And then, having conversations. How do they sound? How do they feel? How is their business? Do they do a lot of mitzvahs? So that's something else as well. Obviously, jiving with them, having that great bonding together and their personalities meshing. That's great. And knowing that they're a legit business and not somebody doing this as a side hustle. So make sure they're insured, because we can't step into a venue unless we're insured. um and it helps also if they've been to the venue you're at, but it's not necessarily a must.
So those are a lot of like the green flag indicators when it comes to booking a great photographer or photography company.
Yep.
But you mentioned something that I find so incredibly important is that, hey, your kids got to like them too.
Yeah.
So what are some of the ways that you can identify that, hey, this kid is going to vibe well with our style? Like, because obviously parents make a lot of the big decisions, but when it comes to photography, you don't even realize it, but you're making a decision that this kid is now going to have to reference forever.
Forever.
So it's a really important job to make sure you're vibing with them. How do we know that it's going to work?
Well, you always don't, but I think the best thing is meeting the child in person. Or at least now, like, a lot of our stuff is either over Zoom, and the parents book me. And I don't meet the child until the pre-shoot. And the pre-shoot for me is like my favorite thing in the world to do, because that's when I really get to know the child and their hobbies and their interests. And we just completely bond over that. Plus, they learn my posing cues. So a lot of what we're doing during the pre-shoot, we're going to do the same day. And that helps the kid during a time when they might be nervous be more comfortable. It's like, hey, remember when we did such and such pose? Okay, we're going to do that one right now. And it just comes back naturally. And when you have that pre-shoot that's around the child's hobbies, you're bonding over something, you're finding commonalities. So you're talking about the things that you have in common, and you're connecting that way. And especially with boys, which is, they're much harder than girls. And usually, they're doing what their parents are volunteering them to do. To really bond with the boys and make sure you're doing a photo shoot where they don't feel embarrassed that their parents are deciding to blow up these pictures to like poster size. And then, the poor kid's friends have to come in and laugh at him because he looks dorky. I promise the boys that they're not going to look dorky, that they're going to look super cool. And, if you're an athlete, we're going to look right out of Sports Illustrated. If, you have a hobby, we're going to make it look so cool that your friends are going to be jealous. And that makes them more comfortable.
Well, I think it's so incredibly impactful that you are trying to make sure that these kids feel aligned, because I remember for my own wedding, like we hired a photographer that we felt comfortable with because it then wasn't work that day. We were able to enjoy it, and we weren't feeling like this guy was, imposing on our situation, our most important moments. So I
Yep.
think it's great that you are going to make sure that you hit the parents' questions, but also making sure that kid feels comfortable, because you are going to be right in their grill in some cases, and they need to be
Yep.
ready for that.
Yep.
So it's definitely a good thing. I'm so glad that we're talking about these things, because I think these are really good tips and tricks to help families pick not only great photographers, but great vendors in general.
Yep. Agreed.
So, Veronica, there's so much to unpack from what you just said. Like, I'm sitting here jotting down notes because I don't want to forget to ask certain things.
You got it.
I have 4 things I'm going to ask you real quick, in no particular order, but it's based on what you just said.
Okay, go.
First is, what's a common turnaround time? Because you said, you put the fear out there that sometimes a photographer, you hear the horror story that they don't get back to you or they don't give you the finished work. Like, what does that look like from digital images and print images?
That's a great question. So I think I'm probably different than most because my turnaround time is ridiculously fast. So my clients will sign a contract that they'll get their finished galleries in 45 days. Reality is 5 to 7 days. So within a week, my clients have their images done
Wow, that's
with a
crazy.
same day or at least 24-hour sneak peek on social media. That's how I
Amazing.
roll. But
Amazing.
I know
So
not everybody rolls that way. Everybody has a different flow. Just that's mine.
what is common?
I think probably a couple months might be common. I don't know for sure in the mitzvah scape. I see online a lot of times like, oh, I just, somebody had a mitzvah in January and they're just getting their pictures back now. So maybe 3 months.
Okay.
What is too
Um,
long? What is too long? When should I think, oh my goodness, this is enough and is enough already?
uh, Definitely by 3 months, I think is ridiculous. There's so much we can do right now to speed up our process that for me, anything over a week is too long, but I'm an instant gratification person. But other photographers have different schedules. So whatever they discuss with you, and it's going to be outlined in the contract, right? So whatever that is, if you reach that point and you haven't heard from your photographer, you don't know if they're running late. I mean, that's a red flag. And that's questions parents should be asking. When should I be getting my pictures? Will you be in touch with me during the time? If you need more time, will I hear from you? Or do I have to go, hunting you down on every social platform? So that's super important. Like my clients never have to worry if they're going to hear from me. They're hearing from me.
Can you explain, like, without going into super detail and like proprietary reasons, but what goes on in the 3 to 6 weeks that it takes to get these photos back to you? Like, why should we be so patient? Because there's something obviously happening there to make them look great.
So I think what those photographers are doing is they are editing all of those pictures by themselves. I send mine out for a service. So that's the difference. So if a photographer is going to be doing, let's say, 3 events in a weekend, and then they're doing that back to back weekends, right? And then they got to come and edit 500-700 pictures one at a time. Well, yeah, that's going to take months, and that can get people really frustrated. I don't do that. So literally, when I get home from a mitzvah that night, whether it's 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, I am dumping my memory card. So everything is getting backed up. The first thing I do, I am actually culling that event. So culling means picking the images that I'm going to give to my client, and choose to do a sneak peek. So it takes me about a half hour to cull through my event. So it's myself, my second shooter, and third shooter sometimes. Have it all prepared to get sent out for color correction. And I will send that out the next day, usually on a Sunday. So that way it's usually back by Thursday or Friday.
Wow.
So I got that all done before I go to sleep, for the most part. For the most part.
I have to say, like, I feel the same way. Like, there's certain things that I do at events that I just have that itch. Like, the second I get home, I gotta finish it up because you're in the moment and actually, like, it's fresh on your mind. So
Yep.
I feel that. God, again, so many questions, but how about albums? Like, A, what's the turnaround time for printed albums? And B, like, is that still a very popular thing? And I naively really don't know the answer to the question.
Hugely popular. I would say 90% of my clients still want an album.
Awesome.
So that's a big deal for the mitzvah families. They know that that's something that's going to last forever and be passed down. So, like I said, 9 out of 10 families are definitely doing an album. And the turnaround time really depends on them because they have to choose their images. So if they take 2 years to choose images, I can't help you there. So my process is all done online. They choose it. It's really simple. I design the album. Obviously nothing gets printed until they approve the proof. And then it's usually back in about 2 or 3 weeks or so from the bookbinder. So it's not terrible by any means, but
So usually the delays are on the client picking the
correct.
photos. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. And I could understand that. I want to move on to a couple of the other things that you mentioned. One was you mentioned the word pre-shoot, but what is the importance of a pre-shoot? Is that something you do all the time? And like, I've seen some of your pre-shoots, and I'd love for you to kind of touch on some of the highlight ones that you do.
Sure. So a pre-shoot is the photo shoot that we do that decorates the celebration space. So again, I would say 85% of my clients are doing a pre-shoot for both boys and girls. So that way it's incorporated into the decoration and or the montage. Or at the very least, if the kid doesn't want the pictures hung up, the parents just want those pictures to commemorate that time in the child's life. So that's very important. And for me, I don't love doing a standard pre-shoot where, okay, we're going to go to a nice park and we're going to take some pretty pictures. I mean, that's great. And that's great for some people, but I love the ones where I can sink my teeth into, the child. I have do the research. So I have them send me samples of aesthetic that they like. So that way I can kind of get into their brain and see, where should we be shooting this? How should we be shooting this? How much photoshopping needs to be done in the back end, because that's going to take some extra time to get that all retouched. So, the more creative and fun things we can do, the more excited I get.
So I think we spoke about this on your first podcast that you were with us, but you were using smoke bombs at
Yep.
parties, and not at parties, but at the pre-shoots, smoke bombs.
Oh yeah.
Can you talk about that? And there was a hockey one that you did where there was a lot of Photoshop, and I'd love to
Yep.
find that picture real fast and actually share it.
It's on my website, actually, under pre-shoot, the hockey one.
All right, I'm gonna find that real quick as you're chatting here.
Yep. So I still do occasionally use smoke bombs, especially for athlete portraits. I think it looks really great. In the background, baseball, football, all that stuff is kind of fun. I can use something called atmosphere aerosol. It's like a spray can of smoke. I love using color gels if it, warrants it. The picture warrants it. There'll be a picture on my site of a kid in all green. He was a Jets fan, and we kind of lit him in a green gel. And we shot that literally in their living room in their house. So to look kind of cool and to, he was one who was initially not into the pre-shoot. His parents were kind of making him. So I said, all right, we'll keep him in his house. I'll bring a black backdrop and we'll light some cool lights. I think I even brought the atmosphere aerosol into their house, and the kid loved it and was not embarrassed to have them up. But, yeah, there you go. Like, how cool is that? Who wouldn't love that?
Yeah. So for those that are watching this live, you can see this shot, and it is so cool. For those of you that are listening to podcast platform, I would never think that this was a shoot in somebody's house. What we're looking at is a bar mitzvah boy with the ball in his hand, green lighting on him, and I mean, it looks like it should be like the picture on a football card, or like with his stats alongside. And actually,
Yep.
here's one. This is from a bat mitzvah that we did together.
That took a lot of work. a
That
lot of
is
work.
a great picture.
Well, we're on a podcast, guys. We have to describe this stuff. Some people can't see it.
Okay,
so Dylan, do me a favor. Describe what you see here.
Well, I see a really, really awesome photo where it's obviously a gymnast. She's a passionate gymnast, a bat mitzvah girl who obviously has this great aura about her for this for her gymnastics. And did you use like powder, like the same type of powder that they would use, like the chalk that they use in their hand? So it's almost like it exploded behind her in like this big cloud, and then she's jumping through it. It's really
if you
cool.
saw the behind the scenes of that, and if you saw, we shot that in her backyard. I brought a black backdrop, but she obviously was jumping off the backdrop, so all that had to be photoshopped. I had my daughter assisting her mother and her grandmother. So she threw holy powder. Her mom was on one side, her grandmother on the other, throwing it at her from the sides. But I still had to kind of like Photoshop some extra in just to make it look kind of pretty. But the neighbor was watching, and that neighbor was at the where did he find me? He was either at another mitzvah or somewhere, and he's like, "Do you remember me? I was the neighbor, and I was watching you do that shoot with the gymnast, and I can't believe what those pictures look like," because he saw it in real time, what it looked like, and then what it ended up, being retouched to look like.
It's so funny that all the like stuff you have to do. I've seen videos of photographers like taking blankets and filling them up with tennis balls and then flinging the blanket open so the tennis balls fall behind like the subject.
Absolutely.
There's so many.
I want to chat about this picture that we see here, which is a bar mitzvah boy pre-shoot standing in his hockey gear in front of a goal, And Veronica, if I remember correctly, you posed this actually in his driveway, and there was a garage door behind it. Is that right?
There was, correct. Yep. It was in his driveway. We couldn't get ice time, so I went and had the background replaced to have him look like he was on ice and looking all moody. And his school colors are blue, so I said I wanted some blue, kind of mist coming behind him, and voila.
So before you said you have to win the respect of the bar mitzvah boy or bat mitzvah girl, and that you would make them look, I'm going to say badass and super
Yep.
cool and not dorky.
Yep.
These pictures describe that entirely. Like, and when we go to parties and we are setting up our gear and these pictures are blown up, you call them poster size, but sometimes they're like billboard size.
Billboard size.
It's amazing.
Which I get excited over.
Yeah, it's so amazing. So, boy versus girl, though, you said that too. And I thought that was interesting because we talk often as a DJ, boy versus girl, music, energy, vibe is different. I never thought of it from a photographer standpoint.
Oh, a bar and a bot are two different parties. Completely. You know that. Two different events.
From my standpoint, yeah, but I never thought about it from a photographer standpoint.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Two different events, two different beasts. Yep.
So how do you approach it differently from a photography standpoint for a bar mitzvah versus a bat mitzvah?
Okay, so the girls. So first of all, everybody's supposed to be awkward at 12 and 13. Why are these kids so adorable? I don't know. It's just disturbing because they're all so darn cute. A. B, there was no way at that age I would have wanted pictures of me because I was pretty heinous at that age to begin with. But God, middle school is so awkward. And these kids, like, I give them credit. Like, they're the center of attention. They're reading from the Torah. They're doing all this stuff at the most awkward age you possibly can be. But the girls, you give them a pretty dress and some hair and makeup, and they will twirl and take pictures with you for hours and hours. And the boys want nothing to do with that. Their eyes are rolling. Their mom is telling them, you got to take these pictures. You stay here, and this is what's happening. The girls, they won't leave me until I tell them that you can go now. So it's different. The girls are all into the pictures for the most part, and social media, and posting the TikToks and doing all that stuff. And the boys, they just want to go play with their friends.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really cool. So different.
Very different.
I never thought about it that way. And you recently hosted a get together with a bunch of industry people, and a videographer had mentioned, some of the trends that help or hurt him at parties. And I thought that was really interesting. So let's use that as a transition point and talk about trends. Like, what trends are you seeing in photography for mitzvahs? Oh, we just lost her. You're back.
Hold on.
Wait, we can't hear you right now. Must have got another call. Hold on. Dylan's going to make his magic happen, I think.
Working on it.
How about now? Nope, can't hear you.
Well, here's the cool part. We will edit this out for the posting, but for live, it's awesome because now it looks like we're miming. The picture is worth 1,000 words, and now you don't have any words to say, so it must be really a breathtaking photo. Mike, as we kind of go through this thing, I was thinking about what are some of the ways that we as vendors can help our photography friends out.
Well, I think setting up, posing the shots at parties is a big piece. That's a good question. We have to work with a photographer, and when a photographer asks us, during the hora, to make sure that the chair is lifted up and facing the photographer, that's really key. Posing group pictures, things like that. What ideas do you have?
Well, how about just being set up on time so that you can get awesome room shots and post photos with the family? That's important. Like, I feel as though that is something that goes overlooked. Like, when you're booking an entertainment company, you have to ask, hey, when do you get there? Because my photographer, they want to take some great photos, beforehand.
Hey, Veronica, can you speak for a second? Nope, we're going to have you log out and log back in. And Dylan and I will just keep the banter going because that's what we do.
I was thinking just like in general, being set up on time. And how about, I got another one for you. How about the use of lighting? So we talk about how great and important lighting is for the atmosphere of the event, but we also don't really talk about how it affects both positively and negatively the lighting for the photography. So like, for example, if you book, I called them, you remember, I coined a phrase forever ago, the spin and puke lights, the ones that are running on auto. You have no control over them. So if a photographer asks, hey, can you set that to a warm white? It'll help my photos out. We have no control over those type of lights. But the intelligent lights that have a lighting tech, we can do anything with them. We can make them go into the ceiling and cast a warm light for certain photos. We can create spotlights. And I think that helps because then we have full control to help your photographer's product out.
Absolutely. And aside from lighting too, like video screens, Dylan, is a big piece. Like having the right imagery on the screens that's going to be the focal point behind all of these pictures is really, really key.
Right. All right, let's try to bring Veronica back in here and close this thing up.
Are you back? Can we hear you? No.
Well, Mike, I mean, look, we're sort of up against the time anyway, and it's hearing from Veronica specifically about how there's so much to think about just before booking a photographer makes me think that we should have another podcast talking about what to do with a photographer the day of. What are some of the things that you can expect from them? What are some of the things that we should be planning for? Something that comes to mind for me is, a list of photos of the guests that should be there. What type of posed photos do you want and when should they take place? I remember from my wedding, and I know that's not the same, but I remember from my wedding, we had to supply that. And then not only that, but then they came back with, all right, this is how long this is going to take, plan for this amount of time beforehand. And then it all backs up from there. It goes from, all right, well, now it's either 2 hours early, 3 hours early, 4 hours early, whatever it may be.
Honestly, we say it all the time, playing nice in the sandbox is our term. We all just need to work well together, understand each other are there for the right reasons. Ultimately, it's to deliver the most perfect party for the family, and that falls in line with lighting, positioning of items, the timeline. The synergy is just super, super important. So why don't we tie this one out visually here, and then we'll do a little post-production. All this talk about photoshopping. Now we're going to be doing some video editing and audio editing, but we're going to bring Veronica back to close out the audio portion of this. But let's sign off video-wise, episode 137 with Veronica from Vero-Luce Photography. I say loose, but I think it's Luce, which is Vero-Luce-Photography.com. Veronica, thank you for being here. And as always, thanks for tuning in to Mastering Mitzvahs.
See you.